Tonight we have the honor of welcoming, as I told you, Ralph Nader, who will speak and be in conversation with Ted Turner and Peter Lewis. Nader will not moderate, but instigate. This program is entitled Billionaires Against Bull. The title was going to be slightly longer, but I decided to leave it at that so as to be able to keep my job. The subtitle of the event is From Charity to Justice. Nader will speak about the difference between charity, philanthropy, and justice. Libraries, as you know, depend greatly on philanthropy, but I think their greatest mission is to be engines of social change. They are incredibly important organizations in our life and in some way are the heartbeat of a city. They bring people together, for instance, such as tonight, for conversations. In Only the Super Rich Can Save Us, Ralph Nader imagines a coalition of billionaires who join forces to answer the question, what if America's wealthiest individuals decided it was time to work for the collective good? We're very happy to bring Ted Turner and Peter Lewis, two of the billionaires against bull described in Nader's Utopia, to the New York Public Library for discussion with the author about wealth, philanthropy, and social justice. St. Augustine reminds us that charity is no substitute for justice withheld. Has rarely been truer than in America, where the wealthiest 5% own 65% of the nation's wealth. Ralph Nader's radical idea, which Peter Lewis and Ted Turner have taken to heart through their social activism, is that the super rich can harness the power that comes with wealth to create a more just and democratic society. It is thus, I think, fitting that they should be here in this conversation and debate on this stage at the New York Public Library, an institution that, unlike our universities and our hospitals, is open to all curious visitors, regardless of their financial situation. As I often say, if you walk through these doors, 15 minutes after walking through them, you can actually be touching the leaves of grass. We have the manuscripts of Walt Whitman. Try it one day. When asked to submit a bio in 7 words, something we do now with all the people we invite, Peter Lewis wrote, Chairman, Progressive Insurance, Philanthropist, Father, and Grandfather. Ralph Nader wrote, Justice Advocate, Founder of many citizen groups, maybe also provocateur. Ted Turner wrote, Chairman, United Nations Foundation, Philanthropist, Environmentalist, Conservationist. It is with great pleasure that I welcome the 3 of them to this stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you all for coming this evening. This is a unique format in the sense that these 2 are my billionaire heroes. They were in the book, and they've jumped out of this fictional narrative to be here today. I want to thank you for performing so brilliantly in my fictional narrative. They were bold, they were brazen, they were pioneers, and actually extending a lot of the things that they have written and talked with me about. So I didn't lobotomize them and start them new. Ted Turner was always a renewable solar energy advocate, and he sets up in this book some of the most spectacularly flamboyant sun god festivals that one could conceive, a little controversial too. And Peter, who was my classmate at Princeton, what a shy lad you were then, Peter. Took on the insurance companies to push them toward more loss prevention, which should be their mission, as well as a lot of other activities. So I want to thank you for your fictional role. And now we go into the nonfiction. at dinner, you said, Peter, that you spent 35 years trying to find ways to intelligently apply your philanthropic impulses. And at that time, we were talking about what does it mean to move from charity to justice. And I gave this example. I said, charity are starting soup kitchens. We have a lot of poverty in the country. 13 million children go to bed hungry at night. That's charity. That's needed. That's very commendable. But justice would say, why do we have hungry people in such a rich country? Maybe we should have fuller employment, a living wage, universal health care, and other things that people in Western Europe have had for years. And so I said this to Peter. I said, why is the emphasis on soup kitchens and not dealing with hunger? And he said, because you can build soup kitchens, which is I took it as a way of your saying, what ideas are going to work to deal with poverty and to deal with hunger? And the thrust of this book is ideas tend to work when there's real resources behind them, when there's real infrastructure. And the abolition of slavery received a lot of money from proper Bostonians. The early civil rights movement and the environmental movement received money from rich families. So there is a precedent there. But having said that, and there are so many problems that we all recognize. I mean, Ted thinks the world is collapsing. The oceans are collapsing. And what's happening in terms of the American empire is pretty startling from a legal and constitutional viewpoint, political and boomeranging and everything else. So there's so many problems, so many potential solutions. Let me pose what could have happened. In 2002, when George W. Bush and Cheney were beating the drums to invade Iraq, there was about a 9-month window from the summer of 2002 to late March when the invasion occurred. George Soros wrote against it. He spoke against it. He actually wrote a book against it. He gave interviews against it. On the other side of that criticism were 300, and we were counting, former retired generals, admirals, leading diplomats, the head of the NSA, Odom, Admiral Zinni, Admiral Shanahan, General Zinni, the two chief security advisors to the first Bush, Brent Scowcroft and James Baker. They wrote editorials, they wrote op-eds, they gave interviews, and they went back to their work. There was no infrastructure. I called George Soros several times. I never get a return. And I wanted to say to him, if he put $200 million in those 9 months with a massive infrastructure of media, lobbying, to take those 300 very eminent people, unheard of in American history, to oppose a president in the pre-war stages, which would have tripled immediately with more generals, colonels, etc., security analysts, former diplomats. Had he put 200 million, and I was opposing that war, and I was very close to the dynamics. I was convinced that he unleashing all of these people on Capitol Hill in the media would have overcome the media complicity, like the New York Times, and the Democratic Party passivity in Congress, and torn apart the lies and deceptions that Bush Cheney used to invade. Weapons of mass destruction, collaboration with Al-Qaeda, Saddam, a threat to the United States with drone-like technology, etc., etc. All now we've shown to be false. Now, is this pie in the sky? Why didn't George Soros think of that? He makes $3 to $4 billion on his good year, and 2 to 2.5 in a bad year. He's extremely smart. He knows what civic action does. He's got an Open Society Institute. Am I missing something? Is it a lack of imagination? Is it a lack that if some of you